What if every problem you face in your external world is actually a mirror reflecting something unresolved in your internal landscape? The ancient Hermetic axiom, carved into the emerald tablet, states it plainly: as above, so below; as within, so without. For centuries, mystics treated this as poetic metaphor, but there's something unsettling happening when you start paying attention. The chaos in your relationships mirrors the chaos in your thoughts. The abundance or scarcity in your bank account reflects the abundance or scarcity in your beliefs about worthiness. The way people treat you eerily corresponds to how you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own mind. Modern psychology stumbled onto this same truth and called it projection. Quantum physicists found it in the observer effect. Carl Jung mapped it as synchronicity. The Vedic seers described it as the interplay between Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter dancing in eternal reflection. But there's a specific mechanism, documented in both ancient Hermetic texts and contemporary neuroscience studies, that explains exactly how your inner universe creates your outer circumstances. And once you see it operating in your daily life, you cannot unsee it. First, we'll explore what the Hermetic masters really meant by this principle and why they considered it the master key to reality itself. Then, we'll decode 3 undeniable signs that this cosmic correspondence is already active in your life, shaping your experiences in ways you've been attributing to luck or coincidence. We'll examine how your relationships function as living mirrors reflecting your deepest unconscious patterns back to you. And finally, we'll face the implications of what it means to be a microcosm containing the entire macrocosm within yourself. So, if the universe outside is reflecting the universe inside, then what are you actually looking at when you gaze at the stars? Think of reality not as a solid, objective stage on which you perform, but as a responsive field that reorganizes itself based on the frequency you're broadcasting from within. The mainstream view teaches us that we're separate entities, navigating a neutral, pre-existing external world. You wake up, the world is there, and you react to whatever it throws at you. Because life's outside, effect lives inside. You're fundamentally a recipient of circumstances beyond your control. This model has dominated Western thought for centuries, and it's precisely what the Hermetic tradition challenges at its root. The Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, and dating back to somewhere between the 6th and 8th centuries, contains only 13 sentences. Yet within those lines lies a cosmology that flips our understanding inside out. The text declares that understanding the correspondence between different planes of existence, the mirroring between the greater cosmos and the individual soul, grants the ability to work wonders. Not magic in the sense of violating natural law, but magic as the conscious application of how reality actually operates. Here's where it gets interesting. You've experienced this correspondence before, you just didn't have the framework to recognize it. Think about the last time you woke up in a terrible mood, everything feeling heavy and wrong, and then your entire day seemed to conspire to validate that feeling. People were ruder, traffic was worse. Every small inconvenience felt like the universe confirming your darkest suspicions. Now contrast that with a day when you woke up feeling inexplicably good, light, open. Suddenly, people smiled more. Opportunities appeared. The same traffic felt like a chance to enjoy your favorite song. Same world, different inner state, different reflection. The Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus, writing in the 3rd century, described this phenomenon with remarkable precision. He spoke of the One, the ultimate source, emanating through progressively denser levels of reality, the intellectual principle, then the soul, then finally matter. But here's the key insight. Each level contains the complete pattern of the level above it, just expressed differently. The human soul, according to Plotinus, isn't separate from the world soul. It's a particular localized expression of it. Your individual consciousness isn't separate from universal consciousness. It's a focused point within it. What if the real question isn't whether this principle is true, but why we've spent so long pretending it isn't? This isn't just ancient philosophy searching for validation. Neuroscience now understands that your brain doesn't passively record reality like a camera. It actively constructs your experienced reality based on predictions, expectations, and beliefs. Your reticular activating system filters the millions of sensory inputs bombarding you every second, allowing through only what matches your current dominant patterns of thought. You literally cannot see what your consciousness isn't tuned to perceive. The correspondence goes even deeper. Studies in quantum mechanics reveal that particles exist in superposition, multiple potential states at once, until observation collapses them into definite form. The act of measuring of conscious attention literally determines the state of matter. The observer and the observed aren't separate, they're entangled in a dance of mutual creation. So the Hermetic principle isn't mysticism versus science, it's the perennial truth that both domains keep rediscovering. There's a profound correspondence between the structure of your consciousness and the structure of your experienced reality. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. The inner world shapes the outer world. As above, so below, as within, so without. This realization changes everything. Because if your external circumstances are reflecting your internal patterns, then the power to transform your life isn't out there. It's in here. The question becomes, what exactly is your inner universe broadcasting right now? The first sign that this principle is operating in your life is what we might call fractal resonance. This is the uncanny way that patterns in your inner emotional landscape seem to reproduce themselves perfectly in your external circumstances, at every scale. Start paying attention to this, and you'll notice it everywhere. The person who constantly feels unappreciated at home will manifest being overlooked at work. Someone carrying deep shame about their body will mysteriously attract partners who criticize their appearance. The individual terrified of abandonment creates relationships where abandonment becomes inevitable through either desperate clinging that pushes people away or preemptive rejection to avoid the pain they fear. This isn't victim blaming, it's pattern recognition. And it's far more profound than the shallow notion that you create your reality through positive thinking. This is about unconscious patterns, deeply buried beliefs you're not even aware you're holding, broadcasting like radio signals and organizing your external experience to match. You've experienced this in your own life. Think about a core belief you held for years, something you were certain was just objective truth about how the world works. Maybe it was, people can't be trusted, or I have to work twice as hard to get half as much, or love always ends in pain. Now look at how your external life provided endless evidence confirming that belief. It wasn't because the belief was universally true, it was because your consciousness was tuned to that frequency, and reality reflected it back to you with mathematical precision. The Hermetic text Kybalion, compiled in 1908 but drawing on far older principles, explains this through what it calls the principle of correspondence. The same laws and principles that exist on the physical plane also govern the mental and spiritual planes. This means the organizing principles of your inner world, your thought patterns, emotional habits, and belief systems don't stay internal. They flow outward and structure your physical circumstances according to their pattern. Jung encountered this same phenomenon from a psychological angle and called it projection. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. The shadow aspects we've disowned in ourselves, the parts we can't acknowledge, we project onto others and then react to them as if they're purely external. But the Hermetic principle goes further. It suggests that this projection doesn't just alter our perception, it actually influences the material circumstances and people we attract into our lives. The ancient Vedic tradition understood this through the concept of the Atman and Brahman. The Atman, your individual soul, is not separate from Brahman, the universal cosmic consciousness. Your innermost self is identical to the ultimate reality. The Chandogya Upanishad states it directly, Tat Tvamasiva, thou art that. You are the cosmos experiencing itself from one particular vantage point. Your personal reality is the universal reality focused through the lens of your consciousness. Here's the practice. For the next 7 days, become a detective of correspondence. When something happens in your external world, especially something that triggers a strong emotional reaction, pause and ask yourself, what internal pattern might this be reflecting? If you're experiencing conflict, what inner conflict might it mirror? If you're feeling blocked in achieving a goal, where internally are you blocking yourself? If you're attracting chaos, where in your inner world is there chaos? Don't analyze or judge what you find, just notice. Write it down. The act of recognition begins to shift the pattern. You're bringing the unconscious broadcast into conscious awareness, and consciousness has the power to choose differently. Fractal resonance shows you that you're not a separate self navigating an alien world. You're a universe inside a universe, and the two are in constant correspondence. But there's a second sign, even more intimate, that reveals just how deeply this mirroring goes. The second sign is what the ancients understood as relational alchemy. This is the phenomenon where every significant relationship in your life functions as a mirror, reflecting specific aspects of your own psyche that you need to see, integrate, or heal. The people who trigger you the most aren't random. They're activating something in you that was already there, waiting to be acknowledged. That person whose arrogance drives you crazy. They're likely reflecting an aspect of ego you've repressed or denied in yourself. The friend whose neediness exhausts you. They're showing you your own unmet need for attention that you've learned to suppress. The partner whose emotional distance creates such pain. They're mirroring your own unavailability to yourself, your own ways of abandoning your inner world. This goes beyond simple projection. The Hermetic principle suggests that you literally attract, through a kind of magnetic correspondence, the exact people who can reflect back what your soul needs to see for its evolution. It's as if the universe operates like a cosmic therapy session, constantly arranging encounters that hold up mirrors. Think about your closest relationships, not the easy, surface-level ones, but the deep, complicated, sometimes painful connections that have shaped you. Each person has been a teacher, though not always a comfortable one. They've shown you parts of yourself you couldn't see alone. Sometimes what they reflected was beautiful, dormant potential you didn't know you had. Sometimes what they reflected was wounded, the scar tissue you've been carrying. Plotinus described this through the metaphor of the mirror of Dionysus. In the Enneads, he speaks of how the soul, in seeking to know itself, creates a mirror in the material world. Relationships, from this view, aren't accidental collisions between separate entities. They're the soul's way of seeing itself from the outside, of gaining the distance necessary for self-knowledge. Modern psychology arrived at similar conclusions through different routes. Object relations theory suggests we internalize our early relationships and then unconsciously recreate those dynamics in adult relationships, not to torture ourselves, but in an attempt to finally heal and resolve what was left incomplete. We attract people who match our internal working models of how relationships operate. But here's where the Hermetic perspective adds something crucial. It's not just that you're projecting onto others or unconsciously selecting people who match your patterns. The correspondence goes both ways. They're doing the same with you. You're a mirror for them, just as they are for you. The relationship exists in the space between, a third entity created by the interaction of two inner universes. Your partner's behavior that frustrates you endlessly might be reflecting your own rigidity. But your rigidity might also be reflecting their chaos, calling them to develop structure. The mirror works in both directions simultaneously. You're each calling forth in the other what needs to be developed, integrated, or transformed. The ancient principle states, as within, so without. Your inner emotional state attracts its corresponding external relationship dynamics. If you carry deep patterns of unworthiness, you'll attract relationships where you're treated as unworthy, or perhaps where you make yourself small, or where you constantly prove your worth, exhausting yourself in the process. If you harbor unconscious rage, you'll either attract people who express rage or find yourself constantly angry at those who don't. Here's where the alchemy happens. Understanding that relationships are mirrors doesn't mean you blame yourself for how others treat you. It means you recognize that what shows up externally gives you information about what's operating internally, and unlike trying to control other people, which is impossible, you can actually work with your internal patterns. Change the inner, and the outer correspondence must shift. The practice here is radical honesty. Look at your 3 most significant relationships, whether current or past. For each one, ask, what aspect of myself is this person reflecting that I need to see? Write down the qualities in them that trigger strong reactions, positive or negative. Now consider, where in yourself do those same qualities live, perhaps in hidden or inverted form? The person who seems too emotional to you, are they reflecting your own repressed emotionality? The one who seems too cold, are they showing you where you've shut down? The one who never commits, are they mirroring your own fear of being fully seen? This isn't about finding fault, it's about finding truth. Every relationship is a cosmic mirror showing you the geography of your own soul. Understanding this transforms your relationships from sources of friction into opportunities for profound self-knowledge and growth. The moment you stop demanding that the mirror change and instead examine what it's reflecting, alchemy begins. But relationships aren't the only mirrors. The universe speaks in another language, one you've been hearing your whole life without recognizing it as a language at all. The third sign is synchronistic correspondence. those moments when the external world seems to respond directly to your internal state with impossible timing, as if reality itself is conscious and communicating. You think intensely about someone you haven't spoken to in years. Within hours, they call. You struggle with a specific question, and the next book you randomly pick up addresses that exact question in the opening chapter. You dream of a rare symbol, and that same symbol appears 3 times the next day in completely unrelated contexts. You need a specific piece of information, and a stranger on the bus mentions it in conversation. The skeptical mind immediately reaches for statistics and probability, dismissing these as mere coincidence, the brain's pattern recognition system finding meaning in randomness. But the Hermetic principle suggests something more radical. What if these synchronicities are the universe demonstrating the correspondence principle in real time? What if the external world is responding to the internal world because they're not actually separate? Jung spent 4 decades researching synchronicity, defining it as meaningful coincidence. He noticed that his patients would often experience external events that perfectly mirrored their internal psychological processes, especially during periods of significant transformation. He concluded that synchronicity revealed a causal connecting principle, a kind of meaningful correspondence that couldn't be explained by traditional cause and effect. In his exploration of this phenomenon, Jung collaborated with physicist Wolfgang Pauli, and together they proposed that synchronicity emerged from what Jung called the unus mundus, the unified reality underlying both matter and psyche. In other words, mind and matter aren't separate domains occasionally influencing each other. They're 2 aspects of the same underlying reality, and synchronicity is what happens when that underlying unity becomes briefly visible. The Hermetic texts would say, "As above, so below." The pattern existing in consciousness simultaneously exists in the material world because they're 2 expressions of the same pattern on different planes. Your focused internal state creates a kind of resonance, and the external world, being fundamentally non-separate from consciousness, responds by organizing itself to match that resonance. You've experienced this more than you realize. Pay attention to the synchronicities that cluster around periods of significant change or intense focus in your life. When you're clear about what you want, truly aligned internally, relevant opportunities, people, and information seem to appear as if magnetized to you. When you're confused, stuck, or conflicted, you experience a kind of static. Nothing flows. Everything feels random and meaningless. This isn't supernatural, it's natural. It's how correspondence actually works. Your consciousness isn't locked inside your skull, passively observing an external world. It's participating in the continuous creation of your experienced reality. The focused quality of your attention, the emotional resonance you're holding, the beliefs you're broadcasting, all of these create a kind of attractor field that influences which possibilities from the quantum field collapse into your actual experience. The ancient Chinese text, the I Ching, operates on exactly this principle. It's not a fortune-telling device, but a synchronicity generator. You hold a question in your inner world, and through the random casting of yarns or coins, the external world provides a hexagram that mirrors the internal situation with uncanny accuracy. The correspondence between the inner question and the outer answer emerges not through cause and effect, but through the underlying unity of reality. Here's the practice, and it's transformative if you commit to it. Keep a synchronicity journal for 3 weeks. Every time a meaningful coincidence occurs, something that feels like more than random chance, write it down immediately. Record the internal state you were in before it happened. What were you thinking about? What question were you holding? What emotional frequency were you broadcasting? Don't force interpretations, don't make up meanings where there aren't any. Just document the patterns. Over time, you'll start to see the correspondence. You'll notice that synchronicities cluster around certain internal states. You'll recognize that your inner universe and the outer universe are in constant dialogue, and synchronicity is one of the primary languages of that dialogue. The more you pay attention to synchronicities, the more they occur, not because you're creating them through wishful thinking, but because you're tuning your consciousness to perceive the correspondence that was always there. You're learning to read the cosmic mirror, to recognize the signs that reality is responding to you because, at the deepest level, you and reality aren't separate. Synchronicity proves that, as within, so without, isn't just philosophy. It's observable, documentable, and once you see it operating, it changes how you move through the world. But seeing the correspondence is only the beginning. The real power comes in consciously working with it. The fourth level of understanding comes when you shift from passive recognition to active participation. This is what the Hermetic tradition calls conscious correspondence, the deliberate practice of transforming your inner world, knowing that the outer world must necessarily shift to reflect it. This is where theory becomes practice, where ancient wisdom becomes modern application, where you stop being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious co-creator of your reality. The mechanism is simpler than most spiritual teachings make it sound, but it requires consistency and honesty. Your inner world consists of three primary elements: your thoughts, your emotions, and your beliefs. These aren't random or uncontrollable. They're patterns, habits, frequencies that you've been unconsciously maintaining. The practice of conscious correspondence means deliberately choosing different patterns and maintaining them long enough for the external reflection to shift. Start with beliefs, because they're the foundation. Your beliefs are essentially your expectations about reality, and your expectations literally organize your perceptions and behaviors to confirm themselves. This is called confirmation bias in psychology, but it's deeper than that. Your beliefs don't just filter what you see, they influence what you attract, what actions you take, and what opportunities you recognize or dismiss. If you believe deeply that good things don't happen to people like me, you will unconsciously sabotage opportunities when they appear. You'll fail to see them, or dismiss them as too good to be true, or find reasons they won't work. Your external life will continue to reflect your internal belief, not because the belief is true, but because you're unconsciously maintaining correspondence with it. The alchemists understood this process. They spoke of turning lead into gold, but the more sophisticated Hermetic alchemists knew they were really talking about psychological and spiritual transformation. Lead represented base consciousness, heavy limiting beliefs. Gold represented illuminated consciousness, beliefs aligned with universal truth. The great work wasn't about literal metals. It was about transforming the substance of your inner world, knowing that the outer world would transform in correspondence. Here's a practical technique drawn directly from Hermetic practice. Choose one limiting belief that you know is actively shaping your external circumstances. Maybe it's, "I'm not enough," or "people can't be trusted," or "I have to struggle to survive." Write it down clearly. Now here's the crucial step. Don't try to replace it with a positive affirmation you don't believe. That's spiritual bypassing, and it doesn't work. Instead, find the underlying fear or wound that created the belief. What happened that made you conclude this? What were you trying to protect yourself from? Once you've identified the root, you can consciously create a new pattern, not through denial of your experience, but through integration of it. The new belief isn't the opposite of the old one. It's an evolved understanding that includes and transcends what you learned before. The Hermetic texts speak of the law of vibration. Everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. Nothing rests. Your emotional state is a vibration. Your thoughts are vibrations. And like attracts like in the vibrational field, when you consciously shift your internal vibration through new beliefs, emotions, and thoughts, you shift what you're in resonance with externally. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending. It's about genuinely doing the inner work to heal, integrate, and evolve your consciousness, and then watching as your external circumstances shift to reflect the new pattern. The practice continues with emotional mastery, not emotional suppression. Mastery means you feel your emotions fully, but you don't let them unconsciously run your life and shape your external reality in destructive patterns. You recognize that your emotional state is literally the feeling frequency you're broadcasting, and the universe responds to frequency. Ancient Hermetic practice included specific techniques for this. They worked with visualization, holding clear internal images of desired states while feeling the emotions associated with those states. Modern neuroscience now confirms that the brain can't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and actual experience. The neural pathways fire the same way. When you consistently hold an internal vision of a transformed reality while generating the emotional frequency of already living it, you're creating powerful correspondence. You're broadcasting a new pattern. Your actions begin to align with this pattern. Your perceptions shift. The people and opportunities that match this new frequency become visible to you. The ones that match the old frequency start falling away. This is how you master your microcosm. Not through magical thinking, but through the hard, beautiful work of transforming your consciousness and trusting the principle of correspondence. to do what it always does: reflect your inner universe in your outer experience. The final practice: commit to a 90-day experiment. Choose one area of your life you want to transform. Identify the dominant beliefs, emotions, and thought patterns currently creating the results you have. Then, with full commitment, consciously cultivate new patterns. Journal daily about the internal work. Document as your external circumstances begin to shift in correspondence. You're not trying to manipulate reality. You're aligning with how reality actually works. As within, so without. As above, so below. Master the microcosm, and the macrocosm must respond. Because they've never been separate. You've simply been unconscious of the correspondence. But mastering correspondence in your personal life raises a much bigger question about what you are and what your role in reality might actually be. The fifth and deepest level reveals what might be the most profound implication of the Hermetic principle. You are not inside the universe is inside you. This isn't metaphor. This is the logical conclusion of understanding correspondence completely. If the microcosm mirrors the macrocosm perfectly, containing all the same patterns, principles, and potentials, then what's the difference between them? Only scale, only perspective. The human being isn't a small, separate fragment of the cosmos. The human being is the cosmos experiencing itself from one particular vantage point. Think about what this means practically. Every law governing the movement of galaxies also governs the movement of your thoughts. Every principle organizing quantum particles also organizes your relationships. Every force shaping the universe is simultaneously shaping your individual life. As above, so below. Not similarity, identity. The mystical traditions always pointed to this. The Upanishads declared, Tattvam Asi, you are that. The Sufis speak of the perfect human who contains all divine attributes. The Kabbalists describe Adam Kadmon, the primordial human who is the template containing the entire tree of life. Christianity speaks of being made in God's image, and Christ saying the kingdom of heaven is within you. These aren't poetic exaggerations. They're precise descriptions of the correspondence between human consciousness and ultimate reality. You contain within your being the complete pattern of existence itself. Every possibility that exists in the cosmos exists as potential within you. You're not a random accident of matter. You're a fractal hologram of the totality, exploring itself through the illusion of separation. Plotinus understood this with remarkable clarity. In the Enneads, he writes that the soul isn't in the body. The body is in the soul. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain. The brain is an appearance within consciousness. You don't have a soul. You are soul, temporarily focusing through the dense limitations of matter to gain certain experiences and perspectives impossible from the unified state. This realization changes everything about how you understand your power as a creator. You're not manipulating external reality from a position of weakness. You're recognizing that what appears as external reality is fundamentally the externalized projection of consciousness, and you are consciousness itself, localized and focused. Here's where responsibility becomes total. If there's perfect correspondence between inner and outer, if the macrocosm is continuously reflecting the patterns of the microcosm, then every aspect of your life is informing you about the current state of your consciousness. Not in a blaming way, but in a diagnostic way. Your external life is a feedback system, showing you exactly what patterns, beliefs, and frequencies you're currently maintaining. This means you have access to infinite creative power, but it comes with infinite responsibility. You can't blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, or an indifferent universe anymore. The universe isn't indifferent. It's precisely mathematically responsive. It's giving you exactly what your consciousness is aligned with. The future isn't some distant point you're moving toward. The future is now, in this moment, being created by the quality of consciousness you're maintaining. Every thought is planting a seed. Every emotion is watering that seed. Every belief is determining which seeds are allowed to sprout and which are pulled before they can grow. The Hermetic masters knew this, which is why their texts are filled with practices for conscious cultivation of specific inner states. They understood that mastering yourself, achieving command over your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, was simultaneously mastering your relationship with the cosmos. Because you and the cosmos are not separate, as within, so without. This has staggering implications for collective reality as well. If individual consciousness creates individual reality through correspondence, then collective consciousness creates collective reality. The state of the world isn't separate from the state of humanity's collective inner world. The chaos, conflict, and suffering we see externally reflects the chaos, conflict, and suffering we carry internally. The healing of the world begins with the healing of individual consciousness. Each person who does this work, who commits to transforming their inner universe with honesty and courage, shifts the collective field slightly. Consciousness is holographic. Work done in one location affects the whole. This is why every wisdom tradition emphasizes personal transformation as the foundation. Not selfishness, but recognition that you can only give to the outer world what you've cultivated in the inner world. So where does this leave you? Standing at the threshold of understanding that you are simultaneously the microcosm and the macrocosm, the observer and the observed, the creator and the creation. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself through human form. Your life is the cosmos exploring one particular configuration of possibilities. The question isn't whether you're creating your reality. You always have been, you always are. The question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, whether you're awake to the correspondence or asleep to it, whether you're taking responsibility for mastering your inner universe, knowing that the outer universe must respond. Here's where everything inverts one final time, where the principle reveals its deepest secret. You've been understanding as above, so below as the outer world reflecting the inner world. And that's true as far as it goes. But there's another layer, one that the Hermetic masters guarded carefully because it's destabilizing to understand too early. What if there is no outer and inner? What if the entire distinction is the illusion? The mirror metaphor breaks down here because a mirror implies two separate things, the object and its reflection. But in the deepest reading of the Hermetic principle, there are not two things. There's only one reality expressing itself simultaneously on multiple planes, in multiple densities, through multiple forms. You are not inside the universe looking out. The universe is not outside you looking in. You and the universe are the same event, the same singular happening, viewed from a perspective that creates the illusion of separation. When ancient Hermeticism says as above, so below, it's not saying the spiritual realm and material realm are similar. It's saying they're the same realm, vibrating at different frequencies. Matter is frozen light. The body is crystallized consciousness. The external world is the internal world made dense enough to appear objective. This is what terrified and exhilarated the mystics. The realization that separation is the fundamental illusion. That the whole drama of your life, the struggles, relationships, victories, and defeats, is consciousness performing an elaborate play for itself, pretending to be divided so it can experience reunion. Plotinus reached this point and described the experience of the soul returning to unity with the One. He spoke of how all distinctions collapse, how subject and object dissolve into a single, witnessing that is simultaneously the witness, the witnessed, and the act of witnessing. He couldn't describe it further because language requires separation, a speaker, a listener, something to speak about. But in the ultimate realization of correspondence, there's only the one, experiencing itself as many while remaining one. This isn't nihilism or saying nothing matters. It's the opposite. It means everything matters infinitely because everything is the infinite, experiencing itself as finite. Your joy is the universe experiencing joy. Your suffering is the universe experiencing suffering. Your growth is cosmic evolution localized. You carry complete significance and total responsibility, not despite being the universe, but because you are. The implications for how you live become clear. If as above, so below means that you contain the complete pattern of reality, then every moment is an opportunity to express divinity through human limitation. Every interaction is the universe meeting itself. Every challenge is the cosmos growing through you. Every moment of consciousness is God waking up to itself one more time. So what does daily life look like when you truly embody this understanding? You stop treating external circumstances as obstacles to overcome and start seeing them as information to integrate. Your difficult boss isn't victimizing you. They're reflecting something about your relationship with authority that needs examination. Your financial struggles aren't bad luck. They're showing you beliefs about worthiness, security, and abundance that are ready to evolve. You become interested in your own patterns with scientific curiosity rather than moral judgment. When you react strongly to something external, your first question becomes, what internal pattern is being activated? This shift alone transforms conflict into curriculum, problems into opportunities for self-knowledge. You recognize that changing your circumstances by addressing only the external is exhausting and ultimately futile. It's trying to change your reflection by rearranging the mirror. The sustainable transformation comes from changing what the mirror is reflecting, from doing the inner work that shifts the pattern at its source. You take full ownership of your consciousness as your primary creative tool. You become meticulous about the beliefs you're maintaining, the emotional frequencies you're broadcasting, the thought patterns you're feeding with attention, not from rigid control, but from understanding that these inner elements are continuously shaping your outer experience through perfect correspondence. You begin to see other people not as separate characters in your story, but as other focal points of the same universal consciousness, each reflecting back to you what you need to see while you reflect back to them what they need to see. Relationships become collaborative explorations of consciousness rather than competitions or conflicts. You trust synchronicity as genuine communication from the unified field. When the right book appears at the right time, when the needed person crosses your path precisely when you're ready, when dreams preview or review your waking life with symbolic clarity, you recognize these as correspondence in action. You learn to listen to reality speaking to you through the language of meaningful coincidence. You understand that your personal healing is inseparable from collective healing. As you transform your inner universe, you shift the collective field that much more toward wholeness. Your consciousness isn't isolated. It's a point in a vast network, and changes at any point affect the entire web. Most importantly, you relax into the paradox. You take complete responsibility for your consciousness while simultaneously surrendering to the mystery of existence. You work with full intention while holding all outcomes lightly. You recognize yourself as both infinitely significant and cosmically insignificant, both creator and creation, both human and divine. The Hermetic masters taught that wisdom isn't about collecting answers. It's about learning to live inside the right questions. As above, so below isn't a principle to believe or disbelieve. It's a reality to experience, test, and verify through your own direct investigation. The ancient texts don't ask for faith. They offer experiments. Change your inner universe deliberately and consistently. Then observe whether your outer universe shifts in correspondence. The proof isn't in someone else's testimony. It's in your own lived experience. But here's the question that never fully resolves, that stays alive no matter how deep your understanding goes. If consciousness creates reality through correspondence, and you are consciousness temporarily localized in human form, then who or what is reading these words right now? Is it the small self, the personality, the individual human? Or is it the one consciousness, the universal intelligence, temporarily pretending to be separate so it can experience the delight of remembering that it was never separate? Are you learning about the Hermetic principle? Or is the universe teaching itself through your particular form? When you work to transform your inner world, who is doing the work, the microcosm or the macrocosm? And in the end, is there any difference? Perhaps that's the deepest meaning of as above, so below. Not that the spiritual realm resembles the material realm, but that there's only one realm, one reality, one consciousness, continuously discovering itself through an infinite creative process that appears as the cosmos outside and the psyche inside. You are the universe asking itself questions and answering them through experience. You are the eternal mystery solving itself through time. You are what the cosmos is doing in this particular place, at this particular moment, through this particular configuration of matter and consciousness that temporarily believes itself to be separate. If this exploration has resonated, if these ideas have triggered recognition rather than just intellectual understanding, consider staying for the journey. This channel exists to navigate these mysteries together, not to provide final answers, but to ask deeper questions. Because the ultimate Hermetic secret might be this: the search for truth is truth searching for itself, and you are that search, that truth, awakening to its own nature. The principle remains alive in every moment. As above, so below, as within, so without. The universe mirrors itself perfectly across all scales, and you are both the mirror and what it reflects. The hunt continues.